Welcome back, friends and family, to a new episode of Yapa Photo. This week, in this new episode, I have two guests, Carol and Lucile, and we're all in Chicago, hence the picture behind me, which is the Loop, the business center of Chicago. This week, we are back to talk about small business and obviously how the COVID-19 situation has impacted small business all over the country, but especially here locally in Chicago. So I have two guests who are small business owners, and I will let them introduce themselves. Bonjour, Lucile. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Bonjour, Gigi. So Gigi and I are actually both French American, and our sons go to the same school. I own a marketing research business, TEA Research, and my work is to understand the consumers in order to help companies improve their brand image, their products, the way they communicate about products.
How long have you been in the US, Lucile?
I've been in the US for 12 years now, and I've been in business for 20 years.
Sounds good. Carol, bonjour. Can you introduce yourself?
Bonjour. I'm Carol Olsen, and I'm the owner, founder of Carol Olsen Associates. I know Gigi because Gigi is my former French tutor. I will not embarrass myself by trying to speak to two native French speakers. My business is data analytics and technical training with really a specialty on IBM Cognos Analytics. So report writing, helping customers develop reports, develop dashboards to do business better. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years on my own, a long time.
Since I've known you, Carol, more than 10 years ago. And Carol, you also met my mom in France.
Yes, with explicit lessons and rules to have your mother not speak any English to me, so that I had to practice a lot.
Well, thank you for your participation. And obviously, the first big question is, how did COVID-19 impact your business operations? How did your customer respond to it? How did this impact? How impactful was it for you, Carol?
Very impactful. I am the only employee of my company. So essentially, if I don't work, there is no revenue stream like many other businesses. So I would say late March, when everything really started becoming apparent that there was going to be shelter in place, that's when my project started getting canceled. So all of the projects that I did have scheduled were canceled outright or postponed, but I would say really postponed indefinitely. Mm-hmm. So these were existing customers. I believe that they have the intent to come back and do these projects again, but there's really no indication when that could be. It could be fall.
Very uncertain, open timeline. And I know, Carol, that you also travel a lot for your business.
Yes.
So this is impacting not only your business operations, but also your way of getting business by traveling.
That is correct. And I certainly do virtual training from time to time, but now that really is the only option. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that one of my projects was canceled was because they didn't really want to do virtual training. Mm-hmm. So we certainly have the technology, they had the resources to do it. They didn't feel that it would be a good experience for their employees. Another customer was a smaller college, and all of their technical and IT resources were switched really so that they set up their students to work remotely. So doing training and technical work for employees really was a low priority.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Is that the same thing for you, Lucile? The same experience, because you also travel for your business?
So I travel for my business. Well, actually, what I do, to understand consumers is that I communicate with them. So our favorite way of communicating with them is in person through focus groups or individual, face-to-face interviews. So what happened with my projects is that some of them that really required to meet consumers in person were canceled. they're typically projects in which you show things to the consumers, such as, prototypes. So things that you don't have many of them, and you cannot send them to their homes to talk about them, online or on the phone. So these projects were canceled. Then there was like maybe a 2-3 weeks period when my clients had, they had projects in the pipeline, and they were considering whether they would do these projects online or postpone them. In marketing research, you need to be constantly on top of things, so to be on top of the evolutions of the consumer's behaviors and mindset. So they waited for these like 3 weeks, and then they decided to do online the projects that they wanted to conduct, because they need answers now to their questions. So what we could do online, we're starting to do it online, and we're really reinventing the way that we do marketing research, the way we do field work. So Zoom has been very helpful because we can do focus groups on Zoom. We cannot have as many respondents as we'll have in a room with physical focus groups. So we limit the number of respondents to 5, and it works pretty well. So it's not ideal, but it's a good way of dealing with the situation. And what is also happening is that as the shelter in place is lasting longer than initially planned, and as the coronavirus threat is much bigger than what we expected, my clients are realizing that they need to update their understanding of the consumer, because the way they live has changed, their perceptions of the world has changed, their lifestyle has changed. So I'm seeing requests for projects that are really focusing on understanding the consumers after the coronavirus crisis.
I hear you. So I hear technology is helping to leverage a business to adjust the business model in that current situation. And you two also a one-person operations. I don't think that you have employees. Let's talk about grants or loans. How does the city or the state have helped you to go through this crisis, Carol?
I would say for me, the city, the state really didn't have an impact on what I do, but I was somebody who benefited from the PPP loans at a federal level. So the first go around, I did not get a response. The second round of funding, I did get a response. And honestly, that's a lifesaver. All of my paying work was outright canceled. So on one hand, I felt, should I really be applying for this? Because I am just one person, and there are businesses with employees that they have to pay, but I'm an employee that has to be paid also. So for me, that was the saving grace. But otherwise, there really weren't other resources that I used.
What kind of resources, Lucile, did you tap into to be secure?
Well, I considered applying for the federal loan as well, but as my business didn't completely stop, I didn't apply.
Because you still have a little bit of stream of revenue.
I still have some.
And also because you work with France, and France is slowly deconfining. So do you see a peak back from the business because you also work with overseas?
That's a very good point. I am seeing now that France is deconfined, I am seeing a peak in the cost requests that I'm getting. It's actually funny to observe that people were still working when they were working from home, but I had no cost requests. No, they were not planning to start any projects. And now that they're seeing deconfinement in France, I think there's probably hope. It's really very psychological, because the economy is the same, but they're back to work with other people, and I really see a difference in the number of cost requests that I'm getting.
And Chicago is also moving into phase 3 of the deconfinement starting in June. So this is the silver lining. This is hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel for all of us who's been confined since March. What is the silver lining? What have you guys learned as business owner about this uncertain, challenging time, Carol? What have you learned about yourself and how to reinvent your business?
Yeah, so, they say we've been sort of given the gift of time, and I think we have. So given that my projects were outright canceled at the beginning of our shelter in place, I created a very lengthy list of things to do, some personal and some professional.
Your
So
bucket
during
list.
this, lots of baking on a personal level, but I have started taking a lot of classes, whether it's new technology. I've been able to attend some online events in my field that I normally don't get to attend because I'm at customer sites. So that's been really helpful. And I've taken the opportunity to try to step back and figure out, what do I really want to do? So my business is definitely going to change. I knew it was going to need to change. And now I need to figure out exactly how to pivot. So as part of that, being the only employee, I started looking at doing different career testing and skills testing to really say, am I doing what I should be doing, and how should I adapt? And oddly enough, I took one test that was skills and motivators, and then how does that translate into the type of career? And they rated you, I believe, out of 100, so something like a percentile. And I was sure it would come back and say, you're really doing the wrong thing, you should change. And it came back and said, your score is 99 for training and organizational development.
Wow.
So I kind of laughed, but I think for me, fundamentally, it's that I helping people solve their problems. So now with different technologies and things that I've been working on during this time, I'm hoping that I can pivot to work with some of that a little bit differently.
And I know that you also have a little side business, Carol, about baking, and you also sell some sweet goods. Tell us about this.
Yes, I have a side hustle that's truly more of a labor of love, a hobby, selling baked goods, jams, fruit preserves at the farmer's market. So a completely different thing than technology. And I have benefited in that way during quarantine, because I've been able to start making different jams and things and sort of getting ready with the assumption that the farmer's market will actually open.
And I can vouch for your jam, because I went to the farmer's market last year and I got some. It was delicious, Carol.
Great.
I kept telling you, when are you opening your bakery?
Unfortunately, now, as we know, is just the worst time possible to do something like that. The food industry has been hit so badly. But if you find that I win the lotto in the next few weeks, then perhaps we'll see that happen.
And I think in those moments of difficult times, we discover ourselves with multiple talents, and we have to tap into being multitasking, multi-talent. Lucile, what have you learned during the confinement, during the lockdown? How did you reinvent yourself?
Well, the first thing that I learned, as a multicultural researcher, I've always been amazed at the ability that American people have to adapt to changes and to reinvent themselves. And I saw my industry reinvent itself pretty quickly, with all these Zoom focus groups that we started doing. So it was for me an opportunity to learn new techniques, using new technologies to do field work. And it was also an opportunity for me to really see a very vivid illustration of the ability that American consumers have to recreate their life and adapt very quickly to moving circumstances.
So that's your silver lining, the ability to be adaptable, adjustable, and keep that positive can-do mindset that is so prevalent here in the US. And that leads us to the end of our conversation. What would be your words of encouragement, uplifting message that you want to share with other business owners, Carol, who are also in your situation, not having stream of revenue right now, who are sitting on canceled projects? What would be your uplifting message?
You have an opportunity to focus on yourself. We rarely, as small business owners, have time to look at new things to do. It's sort of when you're busy, that's what you want, but it's also the kiss of death in constantly adapting to new things. So we've been given an opportunity to do that, and we need to take it. So I would say use the time to learn, whether it's a new technology, whether it's a new approach to doing business, or whether it's doing something completely different.
Exactly. Lucile, what's your closing message, uplifting message?
Well, I totally concur with what Carol is saying. I think she's a great example of, the agility that American people have and their ability to reinvent themselves and make the most of any type of circumstances. So I would really, tell people to tap into this agility, cultural agility that they have to reinvent themselves and to explore solutions and hobbies and activities that they have not had time to explore before. I actually think, Gigi, you're also a wonderful example of this, this idea of making the most of these difficult times that we're going through, because your interview series are very inspiring, for all of us, and they also help us actually, reinvent ourselves. We can, we can look at our wardrobe and take advantage of the styling advice that Amanda gives. We also take advantage of the doing more mindful activities, yoga, revisiting, our career plans, trying to develop new skills. So I think your series are a really great help actually to do this.
I wanted to have an interview format for a long time, for many years. And I think during the confinement, that was kind of a triggering point for me, because I could use the technology, interview people on Zoom, not having to commute, not having professional equipment, but also everybody's confined. So everybody is looking for inspiring message, something encouraging, because I think it's very easy to kind of get a negative attitude and whine about everything, which I'm sure we all did at some point. But I think that for me, my silver lining is to use that time, like Carol said, to inspire myself and uplift and highlight some profiles that also are inspiring me, and also use that time to work out. So Lucile is part of my workout group. So we've been using that time to also take care of ourselves mentally, but also physically, because the mental health and the physical health is so important. So let's just hope that phase 3 is around the corner, ladies. So nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom and advice. Thank you for participating to my YouTube this week.
Thank you, Gigi.
I will see you soon. Thank you so much, friends. And I will see you soon in another Y'a Pas Photo. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Thank you, Gigi. Au revoir.